The morning sun cast long shadows across the Bisley shooting range as Marcus Thompson adjusted his ceremonial red tunic one final time. The 28-year-old had been serving as a Queen's Guard for 18 months now, and today marked his first visit to the civilian shooting range during his weekend leave. Most people knew him only as the stoic figure who stood motionless outside Buckingham Palace, but few understood the journey that had brought him to this moment. The shooting range buzzed with weekend activity. Families, competitive shooters, and hobbyists filled the lanes, each focused on their targets downrange. Marcus had chosen this particular range because it offered both rifle and pistol facilities, and he wanted to maintain his marksmanship skills outside of his military duties. What he hadn't expected was the attention his off-duty appearance would draw. "Look at this guy," whispered Jake Morrison, a regular at the range who considered himself something of an expert marksman. At 35, Jake worked in construction but spent most weekends at the range, often boasting about his shooting abilities to anyone who would listen. "Bet he's never held a real gun in his life, just stands around all day like a statue." Marcus overheard the comment, but remained silent, focusing on checking his equipment. He had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when people made assumptions based on appearances alone. His calm demeanor and methodical approach to setting up his shooting station only seemed to fuel the whispers around him. Sarah Chen, another regular shooter, joined Jake's commentary. "I heard those guards don't even carry loaded weapons most of the time. Probably doesn't know which end of the rifle to hold." She laughed at her own joke, drawing attention from nearby shooters who began to take notice of the uniformed figure at Lane 7. The range officer, an elderly man named Bill, who had been running the facility for over 2 decades, watched the developing situation with growing concern. He had seen his share of conflicts arise from misunderstandings and prejudice. But something about the quiet soldier told him there was more to this story than met the eye. Marcus completed his safety check and loaded his first magazine. The familiar weight of the rifle in his hands brought back a flood of memories from another time, another place where precision meant the difference between life and death. He had requested Lane 7 specifically because it offered the longest shooting distance available at this civilian facility, 300 meters. Most recreational shooters rarely attempted shots beyond 100 meters, but Marcus had his reasons for wanting the extra challenge. 300 meters? Jake scoffed loudly enough for several nearby shooters to hear. "What's he trying to prove? Probably can't hit the broadside of a barn at 50 meters, let alone 300. The comment drew more attention, and soon a small crowd had gathered at a respectful distance behind Marcus's lane. Word spread quickly through the range that one of the Queen's Guards was about to make a fool of himself attempting long-distance shots. The anticipation was palpable as more shooters abandoned their own practice to witness what they assumed would be an embarrassing display. Marcus took his position, settling into a prone shooting stance that immediately caught the attention of more experienced marksmen in the crowd. His body alignment was perfect, his breathing controlled, and his grip on the rifle suggested years of training that went far beyond ceremonial duties. But the whispers and mocking comments continued. "10 pounds says he misses the target completely," someone called out from the crowd. "I'll take that bet," replied another voice. "But I'm betting he hits the dirt about 50 meters short." Bill, the range officer, moved closer to get a better view. Something about the soldier's positioning reminded him of the military snipers he had worked with during his own service decades earlier. The way Marcus adjusted his scope, checked wind conditions, and settled into his shooting position spoke of extensive training and experience that civilian shooters rarely possessed. The chatter behind him gradually subsided as Marcus prepared for his first shot. The 300-meter target seemed impossibly small to most observers, a distant speck that would challenge even experienced competitive shooters. The crowd watched in anticipation, many still convinced they were about to witness a spectacular failure. Marcus controlled his breathing, feeling his heart rate slow to the familiar rhythm he had learned during countless missions in hostile territory. The target downrange blurred slightly as he focused on the crosshairs of his scope. Wind conditions were minimal, temperature stable, and the lighting was ideal for long-distance shooting. These were luxury conditions compared to some of the shots he had made in Afghanistan and Iraq. His finger found the trigger, applying pressure with the same precise control that had once made the difference between completing a mission and watching his teammates die. The rifle bucked slightly against his shoulder, and the sharp crack of the gunshot echoed across the range. Through his scope, Marcus watched as a small hole appeared in the center of the target's bullseye. Perfect shot. He worked the bolt action smoothly, chambering another round while maintaining his sight picture on the target. The crowd behind him had fallen completely silent. "Did he just—" Jake's voice trailed off as he stared down range through his own binoculars. "Center bullseye," confirmed another shooter who had been watching through a spotting scope. "Dead center." Marcus fired again, and again. Each shot found its mark with mechanical precision, creating a tight grouping in the center of the target that would have been impressive for a competitive marksman, let alone someone the crowd had dismissed as a ceremonial soldier playing dress-up. The silence behind him was deafening. Gone were the jokes and mocking comments, replaced by a growing sense of unease as the crowd realized they had seriously misjudged the quiet guardsman. Some began to drift away, suddenly finding other activities more interesting than watching what was clearly a display of world-class marksmanship. After 10 shots, Marcus set down his rifle and activated the target retrieval system. As the paper target made its way back down the 300-meter range, the remaining observers gathered around to examine the results. What they saw defied their expectations completely. All 10 shots had struck within a circle no larger than a coin. The grouping was so tight that several holes overlapped, creating a pattern that professional snipers would have been proud to achieve. The precision was inhuman, mechanical in its consistency. "How did you—" Jake started to ask, but his voice failed him as he stared at the target. Marcus finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying clearly in the stunned silence. "Practice," he said simply, beginning to clean his rifle with the same methodical precision he had demonstrated in his shooting. Bill approached the young guardsman with newfound respect. "Son, I've been running this range for 23 years and I've seen some impressive shooting, but that—" he gestured toward the target. "That's professional-grade marksmanship. Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Marcus looked up from cleaning his rifle, considering how much to reveal. The crowd that had gathered to mock him now watched with a mixture of awe and curiosity, waiting for an explanation that would help them understand what they had just witnessed. "Military training," he replied diplomatically, not wanting to elaborate on the specifics of his background. But his answer only raised more questions. Standard military training, even for the Queen's Guard, didn't typically produce marksmanship of this caliber. Sarah Chen, who had been among the most vocal critics earlier, now found herself genuinely curious rather than mocking. "But I thought the Queen's Guard was mostly ceremonial. Do you guys really train for this kind of shooting?" The question hung in the air as Marcus considered his response. The truth was complicated, involving years of specialized training that few people outside the military would understand. His current role as a ceremonial guard was just one chapter in a much longer and more complex story. As Marcus packed up his equipment, preparing to move to the pistol range, the crowd began to disperse. But the whispers had changed completely in tone. Instead of mockery, there was now speculation about who this mysterious guardsman really was and where he had acquired such extraordinary skills. Jake Morrison found himself approaching Marcus's lane, his earlier bravado replaced by genuine curiosity. "Look, I'm sorry about earlier. I was out of line, but seriously, where does someone learn to shoot like that? I've been coming here for years, and I've never seen anything close to that level of accuracy." Marcus shouldered his rifle case and picked up his pistol bag, preparing to change lanes. "Experience comes from many places," he said quietly. "Not all of them are pleasant to remember." The cryptic response only deepened the mystery surrounding the young guardsman. As he walked toward the pistol range, several shooters found excuses to follow, curious to see if his marksmanship extended beyond rifles. What they didn't know was that Marcus Thompson's journey to the Queen's Guard had taken him through some of the most dangerous places on Earth, where split-second decisions and perfect accuracy had meant the difference between life and death for himself and his teammates. The red tunic and bearskin hat were just the latest uniform in a career that had already seen more action than most soldiers experienced in an entire lifetime. The morning's demonstration was just the beginning of a revelation that would challenge everything the regular shooters at Bisley thought they knew about the seemingly ceremonial soldiers who guarded the crown. The pistol range operated differently from the rifle section, with shorter distances and rapid-fire exercises that tested a different set of skills. Marcus selected a lane at the 50-meter mark, though most recreational shooters preferred the closer 25-meter targets. Word of his rifle demonstration had spread quickly through the facility, and a larger crowd had already gathered to observe his pistol work. Among the new observers was Detective Inspector Robert Hayes of the Metropolitan Police, who had arrived for his weekly practice session just as news of the remarkable rifle shooting reached the pistol range. Hayes had 20 years of experience with firearms, including specialized training with armed response units, and he prided himself on being one of the better shots in his department. "Rifle shooting is one thing," Hayes commented to the group around him, "but pistol work requires different skills entirely, much more challenging at distance. Let's see how our ceremonial friend handles a proper sidearm." Marcus retrieved his personal pistol from its case, a decision that immediately caught the attention of the more knowledgeable shooters present. The weapon was a military-grade Sig Sauer P226, not the type of firearm typically owned by weekend enthusiasts or ceremonial soldiers. The pistol showed signs of extensive use and professional maintenance, with custom grips and modifications that spoke of serious purpose rather than casual hobby shooting. "That's not a beginner's weapon," observed Patricia Williams, a competitive pistol shooter who had won several regional championships. "Those modifications alone cost more than most people spend on their entire setup." "Where does a Queen's Guard get equipment like that?" The question went unanswered as Marcus began his warm-up routine. His pistol handling immediately demonstrated the same level of professional competence he had shown with the rifle. His draw was smooth and practiced, his stance textbook perfect, and his sight alignment swift and precise. Everything about his movements suggested thousands of hours of training under pressure. Jake Morrison, still smarting from his earlier misjudgment, had followed the crowd to the pistol range. "Maybe he just bought expensive equipment to compensate for lack of skill," he suggested hopefully. "Money can't buy talent." Detective Hayes shook his head slowly. "Look at how he handles that weapon. That's not someone trying to impress people with expensive gear. That's a professional who's been in situations where his life depended on his accuracy." Marcus loaded his first magazine and took his position. The 50-meter target he had chosen was considered quite challenging for pistol shooting, requiring significant skill to achieve consistent accuracy. Most recreational shooters struggled to hit the target consistently at that distance, let alone achieve tight groupings. The first shot rang out with perfect timing, the result of controlled breathing and trigger discipline that had been ingrained through years of high-stakes training. Marcus didn't bother to check the target through binoculars, instead immediately preparing for his second shot. His confidence was absolute, born from experience rather than arrogance. "Hit!" called out Patricia, who was watching through a spotting scope. "Center ring. Very nice shooting." Marcus continued firing at a steady, controlled pace. Each shot was deliberate and precise, with no rushing or hesitation. The rhythm he established was almost hypnotic, the mechanical precision of a highly trained operator going through familiar motions that had become second nature. By the fifth shot, the small crowd had grown completely silent. The grouping that was developing on the distant target was extraordinary for pistol shooting at 50 meters. Each bullet hole was placed with surgical precision, creating a pattern that would have been impressive even for competitive marksmen. Detective Hayes lowered his binoculars with a puzzled expression. "That's not possible," he muttered to himself. "Nobody shoots that well with a pistol at 50 meters. Not consistently. Not without extensive specialized training." Sarah Chen, who had been among the earlier critics, now watched with fascination rather than skepticism. "What kind of training does the Queen's Guard actually receive? I thought they were mostly for show." The question highlighted a common misconception about the ceremonial units. While their public role involved standing guard at royal residences and participating in formal ceremonies, the soldiers selected for these positions came from active military units with varied backgrounds and specializations. Marcus completed his first magazine and reloaded with fluid efficiency. His reload technique was competition-grade fast, the kind of speed that came from practice under pressure rather than casual range sessions. The magazine change was so smooth that most observers barely noticed it, but those with tactical training recognized the professional competence on display. 10 shots, 50 meters, Patricia announced as she examined the target through her scope. "Grouping size is... This can't be right. I'm reading less than 3 inches for the entire group. That's competition-grade accuracy." The announcement sent a ripple of disbelief through the crowd. 3-inch groups at 50 meters with a pistol represented world-class marksmanship, the kind of accuracy achieved only by Olympic-level competitors or specialized military units. Bill, the range officer, had arrived to observe the pistol demonstration after hearing reports of the rifle shooting. His expression grew increasingly serious as he watched Marcus work through his second magazine with the same mechanical precision. "Son," Bill said quietly as Marcus paused to reload, "I need to ask you something. That level of accuracy isn't achieved through standard military training. Where exactly did you serve before joining the Queen's Guard?" Marcus looked up from his weapon, considering his response carefully. The truth involved classified operations and specialized units that civilians weren't supposed to know existed. His current role as a ceremonial guard was, in many ways, a cover for a much more complex military background. "Various postings," he replied diplomatically. "Different requirements for different missions." The evasive answer only heightened the curiosity of his audience. Detective Hayes, with his law enforcement background, recognized the careful language of someone who had been involved in classified work. "Those aren't standard military modifications on that pistol," Hayes observed. "And that shooting technique isn't something you learn in basic training. You've had specialized instruction, haven't you?" Before Marcus could respond, a new voice interrupted the conversation. "He's SAS." Everyone turned to see an older man who had been quietly observing from the back of the crowd. Colonel James Mitchell, retired, had the bearing and confidence of a career military officer. His weathered face and sharp eyes suggested decades of experience in dangerous places. "I beg your pardon?" Hayes asked. Colonel Mitchell stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Marcus. "Special Air Service. I'd recognize that shooting style anywhere. I helped train snipers for 25 years before retirement." "That's not ceremonial guard training. That's counterterrorism, hostage rescue, deep reconnaissance. The kind of skills you only learn in the regiment." The crowd fell silent as the implications of the colonel's assessment sank in. The SAS was Britain's most elite special forces unit, shrouded in secrecy and legend. If the colonel's identification was correct, then the quiet guardsman they had been mocking was one of the most highly trained soldiers in the British military. Marcus remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the colonel's statement. His expression gave nothing away, but his continued shooting demonstrated the same inhuman precision that had characterized his rifle work. "Is that true?" Jake asked, his earlier mockery completely forgotten. "Are you really SAS?" Marcus completed his current magazine before responding. "I serve where I'm needed," he said simply. "Current assignment is with the Household Division." The carefully neutral answer was neither confirmation nor denial, but Colonel Mitchell nodded with understanding. "Operational security," he explained to the confused civilians. "Can't discuss details of Special Forces service even after reassignment." Patricia Williams found herself studying Marcus with new eyes. But why would someone with that kind of training end up as a ceremonial guard? Seems like a waste of specialized skills. Colonel Mitchell smiled grimly. "You think those skills aren't useful in close protection work? Think the Queen's Guard is just for show? Some of the most dangerous jobs in the military involve standing very still and looking decorative while staying ready to kill anyone who threatens your principle." The explanation cast Marcus's current role in an entirely different light. What the public saw as ceremonial duty was actually a form of elite close protection work, with highly trained soldiers disguised as traditional guards providing security for the royal family. Detective Hayes realized he had been completely wrong in his assessment. "So when you're standing outside Buckingham Palace," "He's watching for threats," Colonel Mitchell confirmed. "Evaluating every person who comes near, ready to respond to anything from terrorist attacks to assassination attempts. Those rifles they carry aren't just for show, and neither are the skills of the men holding them." Marcus completed his final magazine and began cleaning his pistol with the same methodical precision he had shown throughout the session. The target retrieval system brought back evidence of shooting that defied civilian understanding. Groups so tight they would have been remarkable for competition shooters, achieved with casual ease by someone whose skills had been forged in life-and-death situations. As word spread through the range about the mysterious guardsman's true background, the atmosphere changed completely. The mocking comments and skeptical attitudes were replaced by genuine respect and curiosity about the secretive world of Special Forces operations. But Marcus's demonstration was far from over. As he packed away his pistol, he noticed the range's precision rifle course, a series of challenging targets at varying distances designed to test advanced marksmanship skills. No one had attempted the course that day, as it was considered extremely difficult even for experienced shooters. The course included targets at 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500 meters, with different scoring zones and time limits that made it a genuine test of combat marksmanship rather than casual shooting. Most civilian shooters avoided it entirely, and even police marksmen found it challenging. "Nobody's run the precision course in weeks," Bill mentioned casually. "It's quite challenging. Requires a different kind of shooting altogether." Marcus looked at the course layout with professional interest. In his previous life, such challenges had been routine training exercises, preparation for missions where long-range accuracy meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The growing crowd sensed that the morning's revelations were building towards something even more impressive than what they had already witnessed. The quiet guardsman who had arrived as an object of mockery was about to demonstrate capabilities that would redefine their understanding of military training and operational readiness. The precision rifle course at Bisley represented one of the most challenging shooting tests available to civilian marksmen. 5 targets positioned at increasing distances from 100 to 500 meters, each requiring different shooting positions and techniques. The course was timed, adding pressure that separated casual shooters from true professionals. Marcus studied the course layout with the same methodical assessment he had once applied to urban combat zones and desert operations. The targets were smaller than standard bullseyes, designed to test precision rather than general accuracy. Weather conditions would affect bullet trajectory differently at each distance, requiring constant adjustment and compensation. Colonel Mitchell observed Marcus's analytical approach with knowing recognition. "Thinking about giving it a try?" he asked quietly. "Fair warning, it's designed to humble even good shooters. Haven't seen anyone complete it with a qualifying score in over 2 months." The challenge implicit in the colonel's words drew more attention from the assembled crowd. Word had spread throughout the facility about the mysterious guardsman's extraordinary demonstrations, and shooters from every section of the range had gravitated toward the precision course area. Detective Hayes consulted his watch nervously. "The time limit is brutal. 7 minutes to engage 5 targets at different ranges, different positions for each one. Even trained police marksmen struggle with it." Marcus shouldered his rifle case again, retrieving the precision weapon he had used for the 300-meter demonstration. His equipment selection revealed another layer of professional preparation. The rifle was configured specifically for long-range accuracy, with modifications that spoke of serious purpose rather than recreational shooting. "What's the current course record?" he asked Bill casually, as if inquiring about weekend weather rather than attempting one of the most difficult shooting challenges available. Bill consulted his logbook with obvious reluctance. "Sergeant Davies from the Royal Marines holds it. Completed the course in 5 minutes and 40 seconds with an 87% score. That was 3 years ago, and nobody's come close since." The crowd murmured with appreciation for the existing record. Sergeant Davies was legendary among regular range users, a combat veteran whose marksmanship skills had been proven in Afghanistan. His record had withstood challenges from police specialists, competitive shooters, and military personnel from various units. Patricia Williams shook her head doubtfully. 87% means missing very few shots across 5 different distances, and under 6 minutes means no hesitation, no do-overs. You have to be perfect from the start. Marcus checked his equipment one final time, his preparation routine identical to pre-mission protocols he had followed in hostile territory. Every movement was deliberate and efficient, suggesting someone accustomed to high-stakes situations where equipment failure or inadequate preparation could prove fatal. Jake Morrison, thoroughly humbled by the morning's revelations, found himself genuinely curious rather than skeptical. "Are you actually going to attempt Davies' record? That seems incredibly optimistic, even for someone with your obvious skills." The question hung in the air as Marcus took his position at the first shooting station. The 100-meter target required a standing position, the most challenging stance for precision shooting. Most marksmen struggled with standing shots even at close range, but Marcus settled into position with the confidence of someone for whom such challenges were routine. "Time starts when you fire your first shot," Bill announced, settling behind a spotting scope to monitor the attempt. "Remember, different position required for each distance. Standing at 100, sitting at 200, prone at 300, kneeling at 400, and back to standing for the 500-meter target." The position requirements added significant complexity to an already difficult challenge. Each stance required different muscle control and breathing techniques, and transitioning between positions under time pressure tested both physical conditioning and mental discipline. Marcus controlled his breathing and settled his sight picture on the distant 100-meter target. The standing position magnified every small movement, making precision extremely difficult. Success required absolute stillness and perfect trigger control, skills that had been refined through countless hours of training under combat conditions. His first shot broke cleanly, the sound echoing across the now silent range. Through the spotting scope, Bill watched the bullet impact dead center of the target's scoring ring. "Perfect hit," Bill called out, starting his stopwatch. "Time is now running." Marcus immediately began moving toward the 200-meter station, his transition smooth and efficient. No wasted motion, no hesitation about equipment or positioning. His movement between stations demonstrated the same tactical efficiency that characterized everything else about his performance. At the 200-meter mark, he dropped into a sitting position that veteran marksmen recognized as textbook perfect. His body formed a stable shooting platform that minimized movement while maintaining comfort for extended shooting sessions. The position spoke of extensive training under field conditions where comfort was secondary to effectiveness. The second shot followed within seconds of settling into position. Another center hit, confirming that his accuracy remained consistent across different distances and shooting positions. The crowd watched in fascination as Marcus demonstrated capabilities that seemed almost superhuman in their precision. Colonel Mitchell timed the transitions with professional interest. 45 seconds elapsed, 2 perfect hits. He's maintaining Davies' pace exactly. The observation sent a ripple of excitement through the watching crowd. Matching the legendary sergeant's time while maintaining perfect accuracy suggested that Marcus might actually threaten the long-standing record. At the 300-meter station, Marcus dropped into the prone position he had used for his earlier demonstration. This was traditionally the easiest position for long-range accuracy, allowing maximum stability for precise shooting. But under time pressure, even familiar positions became challenging. His third shot continued the pattern of mechanical precision. Dead center, no hesitation, immediate preparation for the next transition. His confidence never wavered, suggesting someone accustomed to high-pressure situations where doubt could prove fatal. Detective Hayes found himself genuinely impressed despite his law enforcement background. 2 minutes elapsed, 3 perfect hits. This is extraordinary shooting under pressure. I've seen police marksmen crack under less stress than this. The 400-meter station required a kneeling position, generally considered the most unstable of the required stances. Success at this distance demanded perfect balance and exceptional trigger control, as any movement would throw off accuracy significantly. Marcus settled into position with the same methodical precision he had shown throughout the morning. His kneeling stance was aggressive and stable, designed for quick engagement rather than extended comfort. The position spoke of training scenarios where speed and accuracy were both critical for survival. Shot number 4 impacted the target with the same devastating precision as its predecessors. The crowd's amazement was now mixed with genuine awe as they realized they were witnessing a demonstration of skills that existed far beyond civilian understanding. 3 minutes, 30 seconds, Colonel Mitchell announced. 4 perfect hits. He's actually ahead of Davies' record pace. The final target stood 500 meters downrange, requiring a return to standing position for the most difficult shot of the entire course. The combination of maximum distance and least stable shooting position created a challenge that defeated most marksmen even without time pressure. Marcus approached the final station with calm determination. The 500-meter target appeared impossibly small through his scope, a distant speck that would challenge Olympic-level marksmen under ideal conditions. Time pressure added another layer of complexity to an already extraordinary shot. Sarah Chen watched through binoculars as Marcus settled into his final shooting position. The wind's picking up slightly. That's going to affect bullet trajectory at 500 meters. This shot is nearly impossible under these conditions. But Marcus had dealt with far worse conditions in operational environments. Desert winds, urban turbulence, hostile fire, all factors that made current conditions seem almost luxurious by comparison. His scope adjustments were minimal but precise, compensating for environmental factors with practiced ease. The final shot of the sequence broke with the same controlled precision as the previous 4. Through his spotting scope, Bill watched the bullet's impact with growing amazement. "Center hit," he announced quietly. "Perfect score, 5 perfect hits." The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause as Marcus safed his weapon and checked his equipment. The demonstration had redefined their understanding of human marksmanship capabilities. Colonel Mitchell consulted his stopwatch with obvious satisfaction. 4 minutes, 58 seconds, new course record by 42 seconds, with a perfect score. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembled shooters. Not only had Marcus completed the nearly impossible precision course, but he had done so faster than anyone in the facility's history while achieving perfect accuracy. Bill approached Marcus with genuine respect. "Son, in 23 years of running this range, I've never seen shooting like that. Davies's record stood for 3 years because it seemed untouchable. You just made it look easy." Detective Hayes shook his head in amazement. "Perfect accuracy under time pressure, at distances up to 500 meters. That's not just exceptional marksmanship. That's operational capability at the highest level." Jake Morrison, completely humbled by the morning's events, extended his hand to Marcus. "I owe you a sincere apology. When I saw you arrive this morning, I made assumptions based on your uniform rather than your capabilities. I was completely wrong." Marcus accepted the handshake graciously. "No offense taken. Appearances can be deceiving. That's actually useful in my line of work." Patricia Williams studied the day's targets with professional fascination. "These groups are smaller than what most competitive shooters achieve under ideal conditions. You're shooting at a level I've only heard about in military legends." Colonel Mitchell nodded approvingly. "The regiment produces marksmen like this because their missions demand it. When you're responsible for eliminating threats from impossible distances under hostile conditions, anything less than perfection gets people killed." As Marcus packed his equipment for departure, the crowd began to disperse with a completely different understanding of the man they had initially dismissed. Conversations buzzed with speculation about his operational history and the missions that had required such extraordinary skills. Bill updated his record book with obvious pride. This range has hosted Olympic competitors, police specialists, and military champions. But today's demonstration was in a class by itself. The morning's events had revealed uncomfortable truths about assumptions and prejudice, while demonstrating capabilities that existed far beyond civilian understanding. The quiet guardsman who stood motionless outside Buckingham Palace was revealed as a lethal professional whose skills had been forged in the world's most dangerous places. As Marcus departed Bisley shooting range, he left behind a facility full of people whose understanding of military service and operational capability had been fundamentally changed. The red tunic and ceremonial duties were just the visible surface of a much deeper and more complex story. The teasing and mockery that had begun the morning were replaced by respectful silence as shooters contemplated the extraordinary demonstration they had witnessed. None would forget the day they learned that appearances could be fatally deceiving and that the Queen's Guard included soldiers whose skills transcended anything they had previously imagined possible. Marcus Thompson returned to his ceremonial duties with the same quiet professionalism he had displayed throughout his military career. But word of the Bisley demonstration spread through military and law enforcement circles, adding another layer to the legend of Britain's most elite soldiers and their carefully hidden capabilities.